So my opinion is that whenever I talk to a lot of people in my profession, really smart chaps, far smarter than I am, and all of them just shun away from options actively. It's not just an afterthought. It's just like, no, I'm not touching it. It's too risky, and that's the common perception. And I want to share whatever a bit I have learned, and help everybody understand that it's not as complex as it's sound or it's made to sound. So today we have an agenda. Basic agenda is just introduce people and get an idea of what our level of competence is as a group, and take it from there, right? And I do have a brief agenda for the meetup itself that I've shared with everyone. So the idea was that we'll go over some of the details, like what are the basic options, what are calls, what are puts. Try to understand some of the lingo, which is what throws most people off, is what we've learned, and also I have some points that I want to get into based on the interest level, right? So these points would be, try to get the basic of mathematics behind it. It can get as complex as, like, literally rocket scientists do this for a living with the big likes of Morgan Stanley and whatnot, right? So we don't want to go as deep necessarily. We just want to touch upon enough things to get a feel of where things stand and so on. And also, if time permits, I want to go over some bit of like paper trading. Show you, it's my personal paper trading account that I can walk through what I do, what typically traders do, and so on. So I've been through a ton of these coaching classes. I've spent a lot of money myself. So I'm of the belief that you don't have to do it unless you are absolutely certain that you have maxed out your potential for learning yourself or co-learning with others. Because honestly, there's a lot of material on the internet. I mean, you can ask why one more, right? So the idea is it keeps me active. It keeps me writing. I enjoy this. So that's all it is. I don't intend to take over the world with this blog, really. So so I enjoy doing this. So I just want to put out some brief introductory materials, just ease people in, especially people who are familiar with equities and investing in general. So that said, so I try to have a few posts here, mostly just introductory. But what I want to ideally share is that it's mostly the discipline, the philosophy, the thinking behind that actually counts. I cannot give you any magic sauce that's going to make you rich tomorrow. I would not have shared it with you if I had it. I would have kept it all for myself, because there is no such magic sauce. You have to put your efforts in. So we were just discussing before this started that it's analogous to joining a great school. I'm sure there are like really useful classes that you can join, but they cost a lot of money. But even if you're ready to spend the money, it's only as good as your effort is. So that being said, we just wanna share here. So starting off, I just want to get an idea of like I kind of have a brief idea, but let's get it for the record. What is your proficiency level? We'll just start from right.
So my name's Morris Abel. I really don't have a proficiency at all with options. I've not done an options trade. My dad used to like options, and he at one time started to talk to me about them. Then he got sick, and that's a terrible story. But I've got some proficiency with buying and selling stocks. As investment type of trading, but really nothing with options. But I do believe in it's one of the reasons I asked you about why you got into it, because I think there's definitely a multiplier that's there, that's possible without too much more risk than just working with stocks. So that's what I'm trying to weed out.
Cool. Thank you.
My name is Stephen, and I've been investing in stocks since probably the mid 90s, so about 20 years, and I use mostly index funds right now. But I've been taking the last couple of years. I've been taking courses and I've been following options, and I know as far as my proficiency, even though I've never traded an option before, I know all. I'm familiar. I don't know, but I'm familiar with calls and puts and selling options and buying options and delta, and so I know I've educated in that, but I've never traded. I haven't applied it, so that's kind of what my next step is. But I'm still kind of afraid of them, so that's kind of why I'm here, just to get more familiar and learn, and also, well,
Absolutely. Thank you.
My name is Ed. I did some option trading for actually the basic like couple of years, just buy and call. That's it. But I want to learn more about, because sometimes I hold some different stock. I want to know about how to sell like a cover call to make some money and premium. I know nothing about that, so I think that's why I'm here trying to learn other basic stuff. Yeah, I don't want to be moving too fast, and still I feel very comfortable about basic stuff.
Okay, I will touch upon some point that you mentioned earlier. If you have a portfolio, we'll try and visit. Depends on everybody's the common denominator, but we'll see if we can touch upon, like, let's say hypothetically you guys have 1,000 stocks in your of one type. Let's say a popularly traded type, right? Underlying by type, and we'll try and see if we can make money off of it without you having to do anything more. But of course, there will be certain risks or certain caveats associated with it. You'll have to be ready to sign up for these things. But we'll try and see what we can do with a portfolio that already exists in your account. We'll try and touch that later if time permits.
Yeah, so my name is Vamshi. So I started investing in equities like a year back.
Sure.
Once I graduated out of college, so I was more into this actually. And then recently I've looked into options. I opened a TDM paper trading account. I did like 2 or 3 trades like with options. I had success in 2, I lost in 1, but still it's paper trading account.
Sure.
So I just know the basics of calls and puts. That's all
Okay.
for now. So,
My name is Ashok. I got into options 3 years ago, but haven't been really active. So I got back in only a few months ago. I'm more into spreads now, index spreads. So that's what I do.
My name is Raghu. I've dabbled in options a little bit over time, but nothing on a consistent basis. So I understand the basics, but the challenge for me is to really find out how successful traders, with their routine, what do they do, how do they go about identifying opportunities, or logistics of getting in and out, and managing their trades is what I'm curious about.
By the way, I want to mention that Raghu hooked us up with this place. He was generous enough to book this conference room for us, which
Thank you.
made it
Appreciate
possible
it.
for us to keep it free.
No
Thank you, Raghu.
No problem.
This location worked out perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
That's good.
Easy to find. Easy to burn.
My name is Anurag, and like Stephen, I've been dabbling with stocks for the last 20 years or so. It was more just to, just to see how stocks work and more like an investment, but I don't have any formal education in stocks and trading, so I just thought I'd invest a little bit. It was mostly emotional investing because I liked certain companies, so I invested. I didn't know anything about stocks or things like that. So fortunately, I just had some sense to sell them off when things were doing great. So I didn't lose a whole bunch of money. Actually, not much at all. But I didn't know the mechanics, like putting a stop on and things like that. So a couple of years ago, I just got out of all my trades. I just put all that money in TD Ameritrade, which I use as the platform. So then now I'm taking formal lessons, and I quit my job last year to maintain a different lifestyle and just enjoy life a little bit more.
It's good.
And for me, options is more so I can actually live that lifestyle. I realized what I really want to do, maintain that lifestyle. Only trading fitted those parameters. So for me, it's really, so I have all the time, all the investments available to make my dream come true in terms of the lifestyle for myself and my family, and I'm really looking at it very seriously. So I'm taking lessons, I'm investing a lot of time studying things, and so I'm really interested in learning very sincerely if I can.
That's cool. Yeah, that's good to hear. Okay, so yeah, a little bit about me then. Yeah, so I'm a software developer by profession, as I said, but I've been doing options for 10 years, but primarily, what my interests are, my favorite strategies are, they do involve spreads, and but it's just my favorite strategy when possible. So I have choices of multiple strategies that we'll go into later, or maybe in future meetups. But I involve myself with I used to start with various underlying symbols, really, pretty much everything that was the hot thing at one point, and try to guess directions and so on. But that kind of did not work out, and worked out, so it evens itself out. But then I learned to bring in this discipline, and honestly, as I said, I've been through a lot of classes, spent my personal money going to a lot of classes, buying a ton of books. Pretty much any options book that's worth its salt is probably in my Kindle somewhere, or a physical book that I really like is probably in my shelf. Yeah, so then as time progresses, you kind of the key is to realize what sort of a personality you are. Not everybody is risk hungry and or risk averse. So everybody's personality varies. Therefore, your level of risk acceptance varies. So you have to be really cognizant of it, and you have to know what kind of person you are. Right? You can't just go and say, "Oh, I heard this." I'll give you really sexy stories, right? I know this guy firsthand. It's not like something I read or heard. I know this guy firsthand who invested in Apple. Invested. Yeah. He just bought calls, really. This was 2011. March, I believe. February, March. Apple was killing it. There's no stopping Apple. And I had a call option. We can pull up the numbers later. But I had a call option, a few options really. That would have made me a lot of money, right? I ended up losing about $1,000 on that position. But if I'd stuck on, Apple was just killing it, but I did not have the confidence, so I got out. That guy literally forgot about it. He was on a vacation. He was my colleague. He forgot about it, something like that. So he either he thought he had done it, or he forgot about it totally, something of that sort, something dumb. And he actually made $90,000 over few days, 2 days. And this was like we were not even playing really. We were just, it was us kids just putting few $100. Like we were like, oh, let's put like $200 every month or so. We just had we wanted to learn. We wanted to help each other, so we were, so to speak, a team. And that guy just it was a dumb thing. So then we both decided it was actually like a mutual decision that, dude, this is not going for us. It's not going where we think it should have been, and we should get out. So he was like, yeah, totally, we should get out. And he just forgot about it and he went. So, but I lost $1,000 on that. So the point is, and I was not happy about it, obviously, right? But one thing that those actually the net loss for me was something $700 something because we had put in $300. I'm sorry, we got a credit of $300. So the point there was enough of these episodes, enough number of these episodes will make you realize what sort of personality you are and how much risk hunger you have in you. So that you should be really cognizant. You should be really aware of these things. So yeah, so your goals might vary. Some of you might be okay putting all that you have on the line, because it's not much, so you understand that you're putting everything on the line and you're ready to make it up if you lose it. And sure enough, if you go with that mentality, you'll lose it. But that's a different story. But just that, you have to be aware. You have to be ready mentally. You should not play with your emotions. You should not trade with your emotions. Keep them out of the way. That's why automatic trading, algorithmic trading is so successful, right? There's no emotions involved, it's just numbers. So honestly, that's what I feel. Your trading should be just based on numbers. The easiest way to get yourself out of. So I'll try and show you during paper trading phase how to get yourself out of the way, right? You're your biggest obstacle, especially when it comes to emotions. You're like you get into your own head a lot of the times. So it's not just one-off things, right? A lot of the times you get into your own head and start talking to yourself, saying, "Oh man, this is not going as what I thought, and I should do this, I should do that." Then you start googling and stuff, right? You start looking for these strategies, how to avoid blah blah blah, and sure enough, you'll see something that will be okay for a different situation, totally not appropriate for your situation, and you'll lose money. So we'll try and go over some of these, and that's probably more important than learning some of the strategies, in my opinion, because strategies will come to you. You'll know what suits you the best, and there'll be typically like a handful of you. You are not gonna dabble. I have like books with that can fill your library, and they have like myriad set of like strategies and all kinds of analysis, and people are doing this, right? Companies are doing this, so it's not going to be possible for you to just sit there with your tissue, and you're not going to be able to do it, right? So the best way to do it is just get out of the way, set some rules, get out of the way. That's the primary way to actually execute your trades. So we'll start off with like basic. It seems like some of you are familiar, some of you are not. So I just want to start off with some basic posts that I have. So this is, as I said, this is commonmansoptions.com, www.commonmansoptions.com, and some and more of what I kind of just spoke about are covered in the first 3 posts. You can visit if you like. We will be mostly touching upon quick guide, elementary strategies, and some bit of like math, which not much, but some bit of like where does the rationale come from, and how to get more and more familiar with it, how to kind of internalize it, how to understand it more intuitively. That's the idea there. So we'll just go over some of the TLDR style questions. I won't go into what are shares. Okay, let's start with what are options, right? What is an option? So basically, it's a contract that you're getting yourself into when you buy or sell an option. It's basically a contract, or you're involved with this other party. It's a zero-sum game, right? If you're selling option, there has to be a buyer, and if you're buying option, there has to be a seller, right? And why would you want to buy? Why would you want to sell, right? So these are based on your opinion about the market, about the underlying specifically. So each option is associated with its underlying. So typically these are stocks of different companies, or index funds, or ETFs, or any other underlying, right? So this can be commodities and whatnot. So either way, whatever you do, when you buy or sell an option, you are entering this contract. Either you are getting it signed by the other party, or you are signing it. That's what you have to understand. That's how you have to think about it. And the multiplier for option is 100. So it means you are dealing. This contract deals in terms of units of hundreds of the underlying shares. So what is an option, right? So this is a contract. And what does this option involve? It's like, okay, sure, it's like a contract. It sounds like one of those terms and conditions. It's not. It's very, very specific about the underlying doing a very specific thing in a very specific amount of time. Okay, what is this thing? What is it expected to do? So this contract involves something called strike price, and this strike price is what the contract says about the underlying target price. So what do I mean by that? So let's say today the hypothetical famous stock XYZ, right? XYZ is trading at $100 per share per unit. And what does it mean to write an option or buy an option? By this, I mean a strike is a target price for this XYZ. What you're trying to say is that I believe XYZ is going to be at 100 plus delta or 100 minus delta within this time frame. That is where options get more complex than just buying stocks. So when you buy a stock, you say, oh, okay, I think this stock is going to go up. There's not really any time associated with it. You're going to say that, hey, I think the stock is going to go up or go down. But when you're buying, it means you are bullish about the market. However, if you're bullish about a stock, you can still do calls. What do I mean by calls? You can buy a call. What do I mean by buy a call mean? So when XYZ is trading at 100, if you buy a call at the money, we'll get to what at the money means. But when you buy a call at the money, I mean a call at a strike price 100, and for the next month out. So what you're trying to say is, I think XYZ is going to be at 100 or above 100 in the next month. That's what you're trying to say. So a call is basically a bullish. When you buy a call, you're bullish about the symbol XYZ, and you're saying that the XYZ is going to be over 100 within the next month. Similarly, there are counterparts of calls called puts. I'm kind of you guys can go over each of these questions. I tried to keep it succinct, but you guys can go over what they mean offline. But what are puts, right? So basically, these are a bearish option, and what you believe is that at the heart of it, you believe the stock is going to, or the underlying is going to go down, right? So what you're saying is by buying a put option, you're saying that this option, this XYZ is going to go below its current value, below its strike price. So we're just keeping it simple for those of you familiar with options. We're just keeping at the money options, at the money strikes, just to keep it simple. So by at the money, I mean that the strike price is similar or exactly same as what the underlying is trading at for now, right? So today Apple is trading at whatever 110 or whatever, right? So on an at the money option, call or a put would be at 110. So by buying a call for 110 for Apple, you're for the next month out at the money. So there's a lingo that we're going to be using it. I want everybody to be familiar with. So by buying at the money, Apple 1 month out. What do I mean by that? So by buying at the money, that is, what is it trading today at 110? By buying Apple for a strike price of 110, 1 month out, next month, this option expires next month. When do options expire? They expire every third Friday of a month. So that's by the regulation, and every options mostly are traded monthly, but there are weeklies and leaps. We'll get to them later. But most common vanilla form of options are monthly options. So every third Friday of the month, you have a new expiry, which means you have a new set of options. So what does it mean? By buying an Apple call for 110 and giving it time of 1 month, I'm saying that within the next month, Apple is going to stay at 110 or go much above it. But the strikes are not limited to at the money. Okay, strikes can be in the money or out the money. What do I mean by that? Let's see in the money, right? So Apple is currently trading at 110, and anything lesser than, any strike lesser than 110 is called in the money for a call. For a call, any strike price less than 110 is in the money. Maybe I can just write it over the board. So, as I said, Apple, I'm just using this as an example. let's say it's trading at 110 per unit share, and any price lesser, remember call means we are betting on the stock price going higher, which is a bullish outlook. Any strike price lesser than 110, we're going to believe that it's going to continue to remain so. Given more time, it's going to continue to be truer and truer. So it's already in the money. It already has some value to it, right? Because 110 is greater than whatever is less than 110, right? By definition. So any strike lesser than 110, well, equal to become kind of money. So in the money, right? In the money. Strikes less than 110 are in the money. And anything over 110. So if you think, which is what most people, this is the bullish outlook is when you buy an Apple stock, you're hoping that it goes well over 110, well over what it's doing, right? That's the most bullish outlook. So instead of doing that, the other vanilla option is you buy a car, right? So you think Apple is going to go to 150 in the next month, right? 150 next month. So October 2016 expiry, you think Apple is going to go 150. So can anybody tell me what the out of the money value is? What the out of the money part of this call is? 40, right? Right, exactly. So what it already has is you have Apple 110, 40 is your. So what is it called? Anybody?
Time premium.
Right. So it's called extrinsic value. So this is not intrinsic to the value of Apple stock. Apple already has a valuation of 110. The whole world, the whole market has agreed that today it has to be 110. Everybody, all of us have voted for it to be at 110. What you are betting on is not yet in the money. It's not intrinsic to Apple's stock. So this is your 40 is your extrinsic value. So what do in the money options have as extrinsic value? There's no extrinsic value to in the money options because they're already, you're betting that something is going to become truer and truer. It's already true. Something is already true. You're not hoping for anything there. It's already true. So there's nothing that's going to be extrinsic. So as I said, the time value is going to be what you're hoping for $40 coverage in the next month, basically. You're going to hope that Apple is going to go up by $40 in the next month. That's what you're hoping, right? Well, hoping is a different word. You're expecting. That's what your bullish outlook is, right? However, same thing. So when options get kind of confusing is the cousin is its puts. I won't explain it because it's going to muddle up the thinking for newbies. What I want you to do is, I've told you what puts are. Think about it yourself. It's exact opposite. However, puts are a contract. By buying a put, you are expecting the stock to go below a certain value. That's all I'll tell you. So, by buying a put, you think, let's say strike price 90. Put, strike price of 90. So, is this intrinsic or extrinsic? Put.
Intrinsic.
Why?
It's below 110.
But it's a put. So that's where it models up.
Oh.
So what you're betting on is, it's not true anymore. Apple is not below 98 today. But it is trading at 110. But you're hoping that it goes below 90 in a month. So the extrinsic value is, same logic, 20. 110 minus 90. So what you're hoping for happens in the next month is you're hoping that Apple will go down by below 90. You're hoping that it will cover $20 downwards. So that becomes the extrinsic value in Apple stock. So, and there are lots of, we can keep piling on complexities, but I don't want to muddle, as I said, muddle your thinking right now. Everything is its corresponding cousin, right? Calls and puts are basically mirror images at some level. You'll be surprised. Lots of these bullish strategies can be achieved with puts. they're called. The way to think about them is you're looking at something in a mirror. So there are ways to do the same things inside the mirror or in the real world. However, they both are real. You can achieve bearish outlook with calls and bullish outlook with puts. We'll come to those somewhat more sophisticated strategies in time. But so as I said, so there's intrinsic value, there's extrinsic value. However, for put, just to complete the example, if you had bought a put of 150 strike, is it intrinsic? Put? No. You know the answer. You bought a put at strike 150 for next month. It's already, is it true already?
Yes.
Apple is still trading at 110.
For put, yes.
Yeah. So if the put expires today, hypothetically, if you had this time machine where you could just keep everything as same but just progress time, and Apple ended at where it is today, would it be true? That's how you have to think about it. Would it be true? Yes. 110 is less than 150. 150 is what your strike is going to be. So it has intrinsic value. It already is true. Right? So however, if Apple does what the other guy thought, what you thought when you were buying a car, that it would go above 150, then this guy loses money, this guy makes money. Overall, it's gonna equate itself, basically. So as I said, it's a zero-sum game. So there are two sides of the contract that come together to complete the contract. Who does the arbitration? Who does the arbitrage of these contracts? Who does the bookkeeping of these contracts? There are options council. It's a federal thing, and they make sure that checks and balances are carried out at the expiration. We don't have to worry about that. We just enter the market. We try to get out of it before expiry. If you're a contract writer, you don't want to risk it, because by writing a contract, what I mean is, let's see what I mean by individually writing each of these contracts, right? So when I said, I bought a call for 150. I bought a call for 150 next month. Apple is doing 110 today. I bought a call. What do I mean? I actually purchased the right. I paid somebody money to get into this contract. That's what enticed them. All that enticed them is me putting money on the table saying, hey, anybody ready to pick this up? Anybody ready to challenge me on the fact that my bet is Apple going above 150? And somebody else thinks it's going to stay below 150. What are they doing at that point?
They're betting the opposite of you.
Yes. So that's basically the equivalent of them writing a contract to me, saying, hey, I'll take your money, I'll take the money you paid me today, okay? Because I so strongly believe that Apple is not going to do over 150. That's what I think. As a contract writer. What is their outlook on Apple? Yes. Sorry? Bearish. Exactly, bearish. So they're saying that Apple is not going to do over 150, so it's bearish. It's going to go down. It may not go down much below 110, but even if it stays at 110, they're true. Their statement is true. It did not do 150. That's how they take that change. They take the change that I put on the table and they go home. So they made that premium. But there is the lot, right? So what if Apple went to 200? What happens then to the writer?
They still keep the change.
They still keep the change, but what happens at expiry? So let's say Apple, so here's a hypothetical situation, right? Apple is trading today at 110. Somebody entered a contract for 150 and Apple went over 200 at the expiry date, which is 1 month from now. In October, Apple hypothetically went to 200. What happens to their contract?
They have to pay the $50 difference.
Yes. So what they have to essentially, they got into this contract that they are gonna, no matter what, get into this contract at 150. So if it goes over 150, they are in trouble because their outlook was bearish, right? So now they thought it was going to go down, but it went up. They're screwed, right? Because they'll have to purchase it for, they'll have to basically give me 100 contracts of Apple at 150. That's what the contract was. So now they go to the open market, buy it for $200, 100 shares for 200 each, come back and sell it to me for 150. That was the contract. Now what if Apple did 1,000? What if Apple did 10,000? There's no limit, right? There's nothing stopping Apple from going to 10,000, 20,000. So that's where their risks are unlimited. If you're, and this is called naked selling. What they mean, what does it mean to have naked? One thing is you take off your clothes. No.
There's no protection.
Yes, exactly. Good. So basically, they just came in without protection to the contract, right? They were like, look, I'm so confident of my statement that Apple is going to remain below 150 that I'm going to do whatever it takes to give you the 100 contracts at 150 if it goes over. That's what they were entered. Now Apple is 10,000, right? So, of course, I'm ignoring all the commissions that you pay, which are not really, depending on the number of contract, depending on the broker, blah blah blah. It's not really negligible. If you're dealing in numbers, it is negligible. But for the most retail trades, it's not negligible, right? It's going to come in. So a lot of strategies involve selling. So this making these bold bets. But thankfully, with options, that guy may not, the contract writer may not be as naive as we thought he was, right? So he can hedge his bets. How can he hedge his bets? There are multiple ways, right? Let's say he had bought Apple for $10 ages ago, 20 years ago, right? When Apple was nothing, it was reeling, Steve Jobs was just fired, the future of the company was really bad. So Apple was trading at $5. So he bought, let's say, 1,000 shares or whatever, right? So he has them lying in his account, he has nothing else to do. So he said, look, right now Apple is going at 110. What are the odds that it's going to go over 150? Maybe not, right? A month away. Just a month away. 30 days away. What are the odds that something glorious is going to happen within the next 30 days? They have already announced their iPhone. I believe they have their earnings announcement, but what are the odds that it's going to go up, shoot up, right? That's a big bet. So what he's going to feel is, even if it goes against me, I have 100 contracts. I can give it to him at 150. I still make the 145 difference. And I made the premium. Remember, he took that change from the table that I put on table, right? So he took the change that I bet, Apple is not going to go, blah, blah, blah. So he took that change, and he has Apple in his stock portfolio already. So even if worst case, Apple goes against him badly, goes to 10,000, he still does not have to buy for 10,000 times 100. He has those stocks, so he's going to give you. Like, okay, dude, take it at 150. I'm happy with 145 profit. Why not, right? Right? So this is called covered calls. So I want people to like internalize these things in the sense that, not get bogged down by lingo. That's why I wanted to start off with lingo, just enough to know what people are talking about. But we don't have to be just purely using, because options language is somewhat strange at some time. Like, why is something called iron condor, or why is something called butterfly spread? It doesn't. I don't know. At least my English is limited. That I don't understand why they were named that. Spreads, yeah. Vertical spreads, yeah. Maybe calendar spreads, yeah. Ratio spreads, okay. But what are calls? What are puts? Why are so these come from age old. Back in the day when options were first introduced, apparently they would just call and it would. So you can read the history. I'm sure it's on Investopedia or Wikipedia. So we just touched on. I hope it's clear. In the sense, I hope it's internalized as to what covered calls is. So I put a bet that Apple is not going to do something ridiculous. No, not impossible. No, just something out of the ordinary. In the next month, that's all I bet on. So I have my stocks. Even if it does that, I don't mind the profit, and I don't mind the change that I got every month. how many times does Apple do this ridiculous thing that we proposed here, right? It's 110, within a month it went over 150. It has done so many times in the past. Then, if you're aware of those things, aware of those times, you would not be placing these bets, right? But now we kind of know that Apple is kind of dormant, it's kind of stable, relatively speaking. We don't know of too many months in the last few years where it has done 40 odd bucks in 1 month, right? So, we feel secure enough. And even in the worst case, if things go against us, we have these stocks to back us up. And am I going to be happy with that kind of a return? Sure, it's going to bite me, it's going to hurt me for a while, but it's still profit. Nobody's going to blame you for taking profit. Again, hypothetically, if you have bought stocks already for a cheaper price. If you have not bought it for a cheaper price, let's say you were unfortunate customer who bought it for the 200 bucks, let's say, right? You have 100 stocks of 200 bucks each for Apple, and now what you're looking for is that pocket change. You're going to look for that pocket change, and then what would your safe bet be, right? Something that says, hey, what about if I put a strike price of 200 itself? I bought it for 200. I don't mind giving it away for 200 as long as I make something out of it, something measly out of it. But how possible is it that 110, something that's trading at 110 is going to make up $90 in 1 month? But that's very low. But I'm still going to make some pocket change. If it does not happen, which is very, very likely that it won't go up to 200, I'm going to still make some pocket change. What is this pocket change called? It's called premium, right? So it's called premium. It's called premium that I'm going to make for this call, for placing this contract. So we've seen both sides of the bet, both sides of the contract, where if the guy writing the contract, entering this contract, was initially seen to be looked at as a ridiculous gambler with enough hedging on his or her side, does not look all that bad right now, right? Okay, makes sense. He bought it for 200, unfortunately, or if he has bought it for lesser, even better, right? Now he's saying that, look, if Apple goes beyond 200, I'll give you at 200. It doesn't harm him at all. He's going to still walk away positive. Now, we'll have to calculate how much he's going to make, get to the nuts and bolts of it. What is the profit and loss chart? What is the worst case? What is the best case? There's still numbers to be crunched, but it still looks like a reasonable option. So I believe we have. Thank you. I believe we have covered some bit of it. Again, just to reiterate, www.commonmansoptions.com, all one word, no punctuation, has most of these points. I just go to the first one, which says options, a quick guide, or something like intro. That has all these TLDR type of questions and answers to them. Again, these are not comprehensive. It's not a textbook. It's just to give you an idea. So don't sue me. Just look at it for you can get an idea of what it means in a few seconds. That's the idea. That's the goal. So I tried to explain all of these. So most of them are self-sufficient. If not, it gives you enough of a platform to go ahead and look elsewhere as well. But so we have covered what is intrinsic value, what is extrinsic value, what is in the money, out of the money. So spreads, right? So we just had covered calls, right? Where you backed up your contract writing ability with the fact that you had the stock. In the worst case, you would be able to give the stock at a certain price. What is the contract and the options thing, right? I'm not talking about like cash settled index funds. We'll come to that later. But when I enter a contract for an underlying, say stuff like Apple or Amazon or whatever, right? So what I'm saying is, in the worst case, if things go against what I'm saying right now, I will still give you 100 shares per unit option of this underlying at this strike price. That's what it means, right? So if you have the stocks in your portfolio already, and you purchased them for a better profit, for a smaller price earlier or for a greater price, depends on call or put that you're writing, you're still safe. Sure, you can argue, oh, if I had stayed in the open market, I have these Apple stocks that I had bought for, 200, are trading today 1,000, a hypothetical number that we discussed earlier. It's trading at 1,000. I could have got that. But how often does that happen? One thing. Are you gonna consistently make money out of such an outlook? Maybe in 20 years, yes. In 10 years, yes. In 5 years, I don't know, maybe. But to be consistently profitable, you need to have hedged strategies. What do I mean by hedging? You're just getting some insurance against your bet. The most classic way of using options from institutional investors is the opposite way of looking at it. They actually purchase hordes and hordes of stocks, right? They invest billions and billions into Apple, for example, right? So they have millions of stocks sitting in their portfolio. Now they want to hedge. They want to protect these stocks, right? So that's when they buy puts. So puts is a very good insurance for your existing portfolio. So that's how institutional investors look at it, and a lot of retails as well. But just like any person with house insurance or auto insurance, you have to keep renewing, right? So every few months or every year or so, you have to renew your options, similar to your insurance. So that's the price you pay.
Is protecting your option with another option a better idea than to?
Depends. That's a good question, which is where spreads come into picture. So it's a great option if you're trying to leverage your principal, or you know what exactly you're doing, right? So what are the ways to do this, right? So we just spoke about covered calls. So covered calls. Actually, I wanted to touch upon something more fundamental before coming to spreads, but since we're here, we'll talk a little more. So covered calls, in this hypothetical situation, we had 100 shares of Apple that we already had purchased at whatever price, and we wrote this options contract for 150, and sure enough, it went over 150. Now you sell it at 150, right? So it's good and bad, but as I said, the institutional investors look at options as a method of insurance, right? So they have these 1 million stocks at 110 that they purchased today, and they want to make sure that it does not fall below and result in a huge loss, right? The delta times 1 million. So instead, they spend pittance on these puts. So they say, okay, I don't want the stock to go below 100. Of course, this is when institutional investors put so much money, it's after a lot of research, at least we hope. So their outlook would be like, I hope Apple does not go below 90, but if it does, I want to be insured against it. So what do? They don't want it to go below 90. They're able to tolerate a risk until it goes to 90. They're okay with that because their technical analysis says there's a support at 90. So they want to insure against going below 90. So they're going to purchase puts for 90. Right? How many puts are they going to purchase? If it's 1 million shares that they have,
It was by 100.
divided by
Oh,
100.
yeah,
Sorry, divided by 100. So they're going to purchase 10,000. 10,000 puts for 90. Sure, this is not pocket change anymore, right? But we're talking about millions of contracts. So it's just purely institutional investment. But think about it. Even instead of 10K, if you're talking about one put, right? Typically, I'm just spitballing. I don't know what the numbers are today. But if it's a month out, if you're purchasing a put for 90, it's going to cost you less than $1. So it's going to cost you something less than $1. Let's say I'm just guessing, right? So if it costs you 75 cents, you're paying $75 because the multiplier in options are always 100. So you're paying $75 for insuring your 100 shares of Apple from going below 90. What happens if it went below 90? You're always safe because you have this put. Somebody is gonna sell you the puts options. 100 option, 100 stocks of Apple at 90. So you're always insured that you will never have to sell your shares for less than 90. That's what you're insured. Well, your overall profit loss is going to still remain slightly less than 90 because you paid the $75. But that's your insurance premium. So you calculate that into your, it's basically accounted for. So that's why it's not really regarded as a loss. So, however, to answer your question, so we talked about hedging your, or making some money out of your existing portfolio. That is one of the points I wanted to touch upon today, right? So we saw how we could do that. So if you had 100 stocks, go through something and say, is it gonna do 200? Again, you should not base it off of just do I feel like it's gonna do 200? No, that's not what you should base it off. We just took it as an example. It should still be based on certain fundamental criteria, certain numbers. So we'll come to what those numbers can be, what you can look at. How do you decide 200, for example, as a strike price, right? In this case, somebody bought it for 200 and he does not mind getting out of it for the change. But how would we determine what is our best strategy, safest yet best strategy to decide what this strike price would be, right? So that we'll get to when we get to spreads in detail. But hedging one option with another option is a great strategy if you want to leverage your principal. So if you've not already put the $20,000 into Apple for purchasing 100 shares at 200 each for Apple, a good way would be buying deep in the money calls. Okay, so we know what in the money is and we know what calls are. What does this mean, deep? What is this new lingo? What's the word? Doesn't mean anything. It's just exactly what it sounds like. So deep in the money calls. It's 110. Anything less than 110 was in the money, right? Less than 110 was in the money. So what does it mean deep? So it's exactly what it sounds like. How deep can you go in this price range? How deep can you go closer to zero, right? So Apple has options ranging from 0 through 110. So how deep can you go? Depending on and the deeper you go, the calls are going to be more and more expensive because you're buying a truer and truer statement. You're buying essentially. Remember, you're purchasing a contract. In this case, you're purchasing a truer and truer statement. The more obvious it is, Apple is never going to go below 10. That's a really, really. I mean, in the next month, right? Within this expiry period, Apple is not going to go below 10. Yeah, almost 99.9999% of the world would agree. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Sounds like ridiculous.
So why would that be more expensive than?
Because you're buying a car.
Okay.
So you're buying a truer and truer statement.
Are the options only between 0 and the current price, or options can be for?
No, there are options out of the money. So remember, we talked about in the money and out of the money.
Yeah.
So anything over 110 is out of the money. So there are options, calls. We're just talking about calls here. But similarly with puts, that's why I did not want to bring in puts early on. It's going to throw the thinking a little bit, but